Welcome back to Leaders Live. I'm Charlie Stevens, your host. We had a great episode last night, special event at Microsoft with David Meltzer. A key takeaway from the CEO and co-founder of Sports One Marketing was to have gratuity, empathy, accountability, and effective communication. If you haven't seen that episode, go back because that is lights out, a lot of gems. Today we're at 530 Fifth Avenue in Midtown Manhattan to meet with Chris Kelly, the co-founder and vice chairman of Convene, the leading partner for commercial landlords in New York City for meeting spaces, co-working, and event spaces as well. Convene occupies 4 floors at 530 Fifth Avenue, 7, 8, which we're on right now, 9, and 10, with the interconnecting staircase. Let's go meet up with Chris. Back to Leaders Live. I'm Charlie Stevens, your host. If you want to hear about the future of commercial real estate, you are in the right place. I'm here with Chris Kelly, the co-founder of Convene. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to start up the clock, let people load up, let the squad load up. So start tagging some people, get your questions ready for Chris. And the music will start. We're good to go. We got a minute 30 to hang out. Relax.
So now people post questions.
Hopefully.
In the absence of real people posting questions, we have an audience of 2.
We have some questions. Yeah, posted 60 last night, which was pretty cool. We had like 8 cameras. This bug just wants to be the center of attention. Yeah, people will post it. We got some. This view is nice though. I like this view. I like these ceilings.
We try to open the space up, and every single office here it has natural light, so we don't have interior offices anymore. It's kind of a convenient.
I like the interior stairwell too.
Yeah.
GTIF is a partner, is a venture capital fund out of Texas. They were on the show. They invested in like esports. FaZe Clan is a esports team. They're like the Yankees. And then Cushman is a new sponsor. World famous Cushman & Wakefield. And we're rolling into the show. So 2 solid sponsors. More sponsors to come. Slide comes over. Welcome back to Leaders Live. We are live. All good stuff. Before we get started with Chris, spokesman for the real estate industry leader. Why are we doing this show? Cushman & Wakefield real estate guy. Why are you have a camera in front of you? What are you doing? Trying to build relationships, understand how industry leaders work. When I understand how you work and operate, then I can see what you are, trying to go forward with and connect you with other like-minded business professionals. I think that adds more value than just coming in here and talking about rental rates or the market, and hopefully help you grow your business. And hopefully the people who are watching too can connect with you with some good ideas to grow your business as well. Also, I think it's a little authentic and it's more fun than just a regular meeting about real estate, right? So,
Great.
With that being said, we got a Q&A portion, so start submitting your questions now. We need you to engage and tag some people who might want to watch the show as well. Chris, you are an industry leader. Ernst & Young, Entrepreneur of the Year finalist, we'll say, and Inc. 30 Under 30. You win all these awards. You're the co-founder of Convene. But before we get into what is Convene, what you're doing here, let's just talk about where this all started. And I think that's you being an entrepreneur at heart as a kid too, right?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And I think about entrepreneurship like the way that most people think about sports, where, you start in Little League when you're a kid doing small projects and figuring out how to create value in the world. And, there's no such thing as starting in a place where it's, where you're too young or too small. So I started off selling candy on the back of the school bus in elementary school. And I've had so many different businesses throughout my entire life. And when I was in college, I had a handful of different ventures, we were selling used textbooks and ticketed events. And in 2009, I got a call from my former business partner from college, Ryan Simonetti, who's Convene's CEO and my co-founder. And I still remember where I was sitting. I was on my balcony living in Colorado, and he called me up and said, "Hey, I got an idea." And I've reflected a lot on just how many times people get that phone call, and how many opportunities are maybe lost. And I'm so grateful that I went from Colorado to New York on what I thought was a vacation to meet up with friends and connect with Ryan. And 10 years later, we're still here, and now Convene is a much more mature company than when we started, and it's been
power player for sure.
Yeah, it's
I'm
been
sure there's a lot
amazing.
of people who get those calls, but it's about the execution. From getting that call or making that idea a reality. Go back and to your entrepreneur days. What were some of the lessons you learned, that hustle that you had, that you take with you today, that maybe you instill with your team or the people within these Convene locations?
The first thing is just getting started, going from an idea and just having the courage to take your first step. And what I've learned from starting so many different things is that every business is more complicated and more costly than you ever could imagine. And I think that if any founder ever really knew what the challenge was they had in front of us, that there would be no founders. It's a very humbling to wrap your mind around what it takes to build a successful business. But the first and hardest step is just making that first move. And if you can get to the point where you just make your first dollar, then after that, it's about forward movement. It's putting one foot in front of the other, and it's about constantly being in a position where you're feeling challenged. Ryan and I often talk about the process that we went through of becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's about
a common theme that we hear a lot on the show, which is great.
Yeah, and so there's a mantra that we have here at Convene, and you'll hear this in the halls, is 1% better every day. And 1% better every day is about, you can have a really big dream, but it's about chipping away at it just a little bit every single day. And if you can be 1% better every day, if you could make 1% progress every day, then you have 365 days in a year. And that means that from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, you can make tremendous progress. And then we've had the privilege at Convene of seeing that kind of the compounding nature of 1% better every day and 1% growth every day. You see that 365 days a year. Now we're about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary in November, and that's kind of how we got from where we were to where we are now.
Building the momentum. As we sit here today, let's talk about a little bit Convene. You're leading partner with commercial landlords. Started off with meeting spaces and event spaces, worked into co-working spaces. How did this? You said you talked about that call that you got from Ryan, but the idea, and how did you take that first step?
We believe that things that don't make sense get disrupted. And in a world that is as fast-moving and volatile as the one that we're living in, we believe that it doesn't make sense for CEOs to sign 10-year leases when they can't see more than 24 or 36 months into their futures. We believe that companies will be better off if they focus on what they are good at, however they're creating value for customers, instead of being focused on building real estate when it's not a core competency.
Right.
And so we've established the business class of co-working. Convene is the highest level of design and service in the category. Yep. We're not only a co-working or workspace company, but we're also a company that hosts meetings and events. And co-locating those two products allows us to deliver in the meetings business where we host meetings, anything from a board meeting up to meetings of 500 plus people.
Right.
But having the infrastructure on property to support those events where we have kitchens and chefs and professional AV and IT and reception services, when we co-locate workspace with the conference, we are delivering 4 and 5 star service, whereas the rest of our industry in co-working is really a select service offering that's just about space, and it's not about the other soft services like the ones Convene delivers.
Yeah, you see, we walked around, we did a little intro before the show. This is high end. The hospitality feel that you guys have here, is that something that you've built on with the hospitality vibe, or in what sets you apart besides just the 5 star service that you provide?
So the 3 pillars of our company are hospitality, design and real estate, and technology. Mm-hmm. And so we're creating hospitality-infused spaces that are connected and powered with technology in spaces that are uniquely and beautifully designed. And we're partnering with some of the world's largest and most preeminent landlords in order to introduce our services into their buildings, not in a way that is mutually exclusive to creating value in the rest of the building, but that's really helping large commercial landlords to reposition their assets and then to introduce a higher level of services to every single floor in their building. So something that a lot of people don't know about Convene is that when we go into a building, our services, things like our catering operations, can be delivered to non-Convene floors. Mm. And so when you work inside of a Convene-enabled building, even if your company is engaged in a traditional direct lease with the landlord, having Convene in your building is something that can really change the experience of every single tenant in an asset, not just the ones who are members of our space. Right,
and you're giving flexibility to somebody who's growing within the building as well. Serious value adds, I like that. Then also you have, what's next with Convene? You're growing, you had a big raise, you had a bunch of funds raised, but where is this? You're growing into 15 markets, right? Walk us through where the future of Convene is.
So there's 2 major changes that we have as a company in terms of the value that we're creating for our tenants and our landlord partners. One is that we're starting to work in collaboration with anchor tenants and with landlords in designing how the companies will occupy spaces differently. And so we now have anchor tenants who are working with us ahead of their leasing, and then we're identifying assets together and moving into a building where Convene is creating the shared services, amenities, and expansion and contraction spaces for the tenant, and we're co-locating with them, creating a higher level of service for them and the entire building, which the landlords like. While also reducing their costs because we're moving some of those non-core functions off their balance sheet. So one is this movement of instead of moving into a building as an afterthought where it's too late for tenants to redesign spaces and create efficiencies like the ones that co-working and shared services can produce. Instead, we're actually ahead of the design and leasing process, working with them on site selection and design. The next big change for us is really creating value in network. So where Convene stands today, we're live in 6 cities with an office in a 7th. So we're New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, LA, and DC and Northern Virginia. And we have a development office in London with some locations that will be announced shortly. But we're expanding into a dozen plus other cities in the next 18 months or so. And the value of the network starts to become greater than the sum of its parts, in that companies can start to flex through our portfolio. And this is not just co-working spaces, but it's also meeting spaces and entertainment and lounge spaces and things of that nature. Yeah. And so that's an exciting development for us.
I think so. And you naturally went into the collaboration part of it and the network part of it. You mentioned briefly about technology. Let's talk about some of the collaborations you're doing with technology and how it's setting apart.
So at Convene, we have technology in-house. So there's an entire product design team. And the most valuable technology that we have is the technology that people can't see. It's the technology that's connecting all of our operations in the back end and creating a seamless integration that's efficient, but that's also making it easier and more enjoyable for our customers to do business with us. So that's behind the scenes.
Right.
We're creating this network that is powering our business. And then in terms of what our customers can see, we have a Convene app where all of our shared services and all of our shared spaces are accessible and connected through this app. We don't sell this to third parties. This is only available inside of Convene spaces. And the part of real estate tech or prop tech that I think people don't appreciate is that once all of the fragmented assets become internet connected, our ability to share and also consume shared spaces and services becomes much more fluid. So the only way that Airbnb and Uber or Seamless Web, all of these shared economy concepts, the only way that these things have been able to work is because they're all on the back end connected by the technology. What's happening now is all the meeting rooms, the food services, the co-working spaces, the guest registration, tenant communications, community events, attendance engagement, fitness and wellness centers, reserving your Peloton bike at Convene.
Right. Which you have upstairs.
Which we have upstairs.
Big shout out to upstairs, Peloton bike.
But once all these things become internet connected, then they can become easily shared, and this will really accelerate the flywheel of how the shared economy starts to redefine real estate as we know it.
That's smart. That's smart. Your network is strong. You are a big CoreNet guy. Can you talk a little bit how you've built your network and how you've grown your network, and give a little bit, of insight so people can grow their network as well, because you have a very strong one?
Well, I started networking when Convene was not what it is today. And I started networking with a lot of my peers and creating goodwill, within the peer set, whom at the time, those people weren't particularly viewed as important in the world. Well, 10 years flew by, and now a lot of those people are decision makers in really big and influential companies, and I have relationships that really advantage me in the company in ways that are very valuable. So one piece of advice I would have, especially for people who are earlier on in their career, is get out there often. Try to pick who you think are the future stars in the industry, people who you really think are your go-getters and your thought leaders and independent thinkers, and develop close relationships with them, and realize that building those types of relationships, it takes time. And you often have to kind of water the plant, and you have to invest in those relationships and create value, before you start being able to take anything from them.
Yeah.
So one is, I would say, start early and get out there, especially before you start having kids and need to be a good parent and run home. Get out there and network.
I got all the kids, the most kids on LinkedIn. It's a fact.
Yeah, I love it. And
how do you water that plant, though? You were talking about cultivating those relationships. How do you water that plant? How do you continue those relationships? I mean, sure, drinks could be one way, but it's probably not the most best way or efficient way, but how have you done it?
You really want to start developing personal relationships where you care about people and they care about you more than about what logos on your business card, or what your title is.
Authentic.
Authentic relationships where you really care about people, and this is. Networking and building, a great group of friends shouldn't be two mutually exclusive things. I think, they can be one and the same. But I would say what really defines great networkers from average or mediocre networkers is being proactive and strategic. When I go to a conference, and now I speak at a lot of conferences, I do my homework ahead of time. and also with the help of our team, identify the people who I should be speaking with, and you reach out often on LinkedIn.
It's a good platform.
You reach out and schedule a coffee. It could be 30 minutes to connect with somebody. And so I'll often network with fellow speakers and or the host of the event. And that's kind of my prep work that I do ahead of a conference. When I'm in the conference, the trick that I use is I'll always ask people, who is the one person in the world who you think I should know? And I've found that if you ask somebody, is there anybody who I should know? They'll usually give you nobody. They'll give you a response like, I'll think about it and get back to you, also known as no. Mm-hmm. If you ask somebody for just one single person who they think is the best in the world for you to know, you'll almost always get at least one, if not three. And then you kind of daisy chain that connection by keep on asking that same question over and over again. And I like to start with whoever I think is the most influential and connected person in the room. So usually, I have a relationship with whoever's hosting the event, and I'll ask them. Mm-hmm. If there's one person in this room for me to know, who is it? And then make the connection that way.
I like that. We're gonna clip that one. That's a pretty good one. Josiah is gonna take some of the viewer questions. He's gonna get the mic ready. But as we continue to talk about the network and collaborate, you have a world-class group of executives here at Convene. How do you go about recruiting them and cultivating them and making them, one solid team?
Well, it's interesting because when you're just getting started, nobody really wants to work for you. And so you have to build your own momentum in the beginning. I often laugh that when Ryan and I first started, like if our job descriptions were honest, they would read, who wants to work for, little known company with, uncertain future and inexperienced executives, and see who shows up. Probably not that many people. But, so in the beginning of the company, we really had to go out and evangelize the business and share our vision with people. As the company's grown, we have the ability to use more traditional channels. And so we do have an internal recruiting team at Convene. They use the LinkedIn Recruiter product. Mm-hmm. And it's incredible. You can, going back to the difference between being proactive and strategic versus being reactive and tactical. When we're hiring executives today, we have the liberty of asking ourselves the question, who would be the best person in the world to sit in this seat? And we can go on LinkedIn and shoot them a note, and usually within a week or two, they're sitting in your office and you're having a conversation. And so we live in a world today where everybody is one click and a short message away from being in front of you, and we've leveraged those resources to the fullest extent.
Solid. Josiah, what are we getting on the feed that we can ask Chris here?
Yeah, we're actually getting some great questions from people who are watching on Leaders Live right now through LinkedIn Live. But the first one I wanted to throw at you is from Nick. His question is, how are you guys at Convene investing in experiential marketing to grow the community at Convene?
So at Convene, we're in a unique position to play host. And so we find communities that we believe we'd like to be closer with, and then we invite them to bring their members under our roof. And we feel honored that companies and communities, they'll bring their most important relationships and their most important, most pivotal meetings. They bring to Convene to be hosted here, and when we can bring people in house, that's a major part of our experiential marketing strategy.
The product speaks for itself, I think, when you come here too. And then you got the brand recognition there. When everybody comes, they're going to want to host their next event.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it. You come here and I'm sold,
Once people come into the Convene space, they understand how it's a different animal. And trying to explain what Convene is outside of a Convene space would be like trying to explain to somebody what an iPhone is if they'd never seen one before. We do a lot of different things, and it can sound overwhelming, but it's beautifully integrated and understandable once you step foot in our spaces. And so, we just try to bring people here and allow them to feel the difference.
Right. It's good. I feel the difference. Josiah, what else we got here?
All right, great. We got a second question from Salvatore. They're asking, in the near-term business model for growth, are landlords and buildings more valuable and more of a focus, or is the focus more on firms and clients?
So we're operating in what's called a multi-sided business model, where we have to understand and define our value proposition for two different stakeholders. At Convene, landlords are a stakeholder, and the way that we create value with landlords is by usually helping them to reposition assets that are in the value creation stage of their life cycle, either during new development or repositioning. And we help to create shared space, services, and amenities that support the narrative that they're trying to create around an asset. And then for our tenants, for tenants or our customers, we're creating value for anybody in the world who's hosting meetings. They'll find that Convene is a much more professional and technology-enabled environment to host meetings relative to hotels, and is much more cost-effective than building it yourself. And and then in the workspace for co-working, anybody who is a well-established, well-capitalized business, this is the kind of space that speaks to them. So we tend to see that the people for whom we create the most value are mature or otherwise well-capitalized businesses, and they tend to fall in design, strategy, innovation, technology, or either executive or customer-facing sales functions. So we understand, in that explanation, we understand from both landlords and clients, we understand deeply what people's needs are, what the alternatives are that they're seeking, and then that's the product that we build. And that's, it has to be both for us. It's not one or the other.
That's good. We got time for one more? Yeah.
Yeah, let's go one more. One of our viewers, Nick, was asking what you feel like is, and you've talked about quite a few of these things over the last couple of minutes, but what is the number one value prop that sets apart Convene from any other movers in the co-working space world?
Traditional co-working is focused on delivering cheaper and more flexible real estate. Convene is focused on delivering better, more flexible real estate. We're extremely focused on experience. For the companies who understand the Convene product, understand that design is the body language of an organization, and that when you tell somebody where you work, in today's world, that's social capital. People understand that if you are there are some co-working brands that stand for startup type spaces or other more cost-focused businesses. For us, we stand for quality and professionalism, and we're unwavering from that positioning in the market. And so what we see happening is as the co-working industry matures, you start to have the brand stratification like what you have in hotels, where there's select service hotels that do a great job for a specific demographic. And there's nothing wrong with being a good value play. And then there's 4-star type hotels that, 4- and 5-star hotels that bring a different value in the world. And that's the space that we sit in.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Awesome. I think you do that too. It seems like a partnership of really good landlords, Brookfield, RXR, SL Green too. So solid A-class partners there.
Yeah, half of our landlord partners have become investors, so I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, very good sign. As we wrap this up, can you leave us off with your words to live by, like a personal mantra or ethos that you could inspire the LinkedIn community with?
My personal mantra is be curious and smile. It's about being a continuous learner and about just tinkering with the world and figuring out where you can create value and help people. And then it's about having fun and enjoying people's company along the way and realizing how all of our work and all of our lives are deeply interconnected, and that we should build networks and friendships in our work and personal lives that are places where we enjoy being. Mm-hmm. And so be curious and smile is what I live by.
I like that.
And if I had to put a challenge to people,
right, let's end off with a challenge for the community, or a question.
My challenge would be is if you could do anything in the world and know that you would not fail, what would that be? And if you write down the answer to that question and take a hard look at it, think about what would be the worst thing that would happen if you just took one step toward making that dream a reality. And if you do that, you'll realize that the upside of pushing yourself is always greater than the downside risk. So think of what that might be for yourself, and then take one step forward and wake up the next day and do the same thing.
I think I want to be a professional golfer, but I can't do that. I set aside the physical abilities. I appreciate your time. That was very good. We got some really good stuff out of here. Nadal's going to hit the music. We're going to run it down. And that's it.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
So get some music. And we're